This concept of area, we're going to first define it. We're going to first define what it actually is in math. And generally, what area is, it is space inside a closed two-dimensional figure. I'm going to say that again. It is a space inside a closed two-dimensional figure. So, what is a closed two-dimensional figure? So first of all, let's define two-dimensional figure. Two-dimensional figures, flat, closed figures like what? A square or a rectangle, for example. It's closed and there are only two dimensions to it. Those dimensions are length and width. Length and width. The big piece with area, friends, is that the figure is closed. It has to be closed. So if we are looking at something like this, for example, this is not closed. This is not closed. This is. No, it's not a perfect rectangle. I know, I told y'all, I'm not an artist and I don't have a ruler around me right now. But the idea being, this is closed, this is two-dimensional. What gives it the two dimensions? We have length and width. The area is this space inside of it. It's this space inside of it. This is what we're talking about. How many of you are with me so far? Excellent. Area, the space inside a closed two-dimensional figure. Yes, there are ways we can measure it. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute. So what I want you to do is I want you to take a look at page 303. You should have this in front of you right now. And in a moment, I'm going to share my screen and we're going to talk a little bit more about what is on page 303. Okay? Give me just a minute and I'm going to share my screen. All right, friends, so on page 303, we are going to see here up at the very, very top, it is asking us, how can you measure the area of a shape? Well, let's see. Where it says model it under number 1, it says to complete the problems below. Number 1, there are different ways you can measure a rug. We all know what a rug is, right? A rug is like a carpet. So there are different ways you can measure a rug in the shape of a rectangle. So it says to draw a rectangular rug to the right and label its length and width. So let's do that right now. I'm going to draw a rectangular rug. And you all know I'm going to use purple because you all know how I feel about it. All right, a rectangular rug. So it's not a square, it's a rectangle, which means I'm going to have some sides a little bit longer. So there we go. It's not perfect, but it works. All right. So down here, I have what I call the length. It's the length of my rug. And right here, this is what we call the width of the rug. that root word being wide, how wide it is, right? And so in question B, it's asking us, how could you measure the length and width of the rug? How could you measure that? Well, one way we could do it is we could simply use a ruler, right? How many of you have heard of a ruler? How many of you know what a ruler is? How many of you, oh, look at Talani's like, yes, of course, I got it. Thank you, Talani. Here's my beautiful aqua color ruler, right? We could simply use a ruler and we could do what? We could measure and we could measure. We could measure the length, we could measure the width using a ruler, right? So I can simply say that. I could say, I could use a ruler. And notice, friends, how I am using a complete sentence here. I am giving you that answer in a complete sentence. That is very fourth grade, right? I'm not just saying, oh, a ruler, right? I'm saying I could use a ruler. That's one way. But friends, there's another way. And this is something that we're going to be focusing on this week. Take a look at number 2. Take a look at number 2. And it looks like to the right here, we have these tiles, and then we have this beautiful rug inside. Number 2 says that area is the amount of space that a flat shape covers, right? We can take a look at this rug and we can also call that a rectangle or a two-dimensional closed shape. The area of a rug is the amount of floor space it covers. How do you think you could measure the area of this rug to the right? And I am also going to add there, no, you cannot use a ruler. What is another way that you could measure the area of the rug? Another way. This is a way that you could do it. You could count these number of tiles that the rug is actually covering. We could count the number of tiles that this rug is actually covering. And what we call those are square units. We call them square units. What is a square unit? It's the area of a square with side lengths that equal 1 unit. So what could you put here for the answer to number 2? You can say, I could count the number of tiles it covers. I could count the number of tiles it covers. So let's count them. Here's the rug, or that two-dimensional closed shape. And here are the tiles underneath that we can clearly see. They're kind of a gray color, right? Let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It covers 8 tiles. It covers 8 tiles. So if we take a look at number 3, this question is going to have us think about it a little bit. How are your ways of measuring in problems 1 and 2? How are they different? So in problem 1, we're using a ruler and we're measuring. And in number 2, we're simply counting the number of tiles that it covers, or square units. Square units. So in problem 1, I use a ruler. In problem 2, I count covered tiles. So again, in problem 1, I use a ruler. My handy ruler, my beautiful blue teal color ruler. And in problem 2, I count covered tiles. I'm going to give you a moment to get the rest of that written down before we move on to page 304. See some of you writing. That's awesome. I'm going to give you about 5 more seconds and then we're going to move pages. All right, so let's take a look at page 304, up at the top. 304 up at the top. Number 4, again, here up at the top. This is very important. You measure area in units that can cover space, called square units. Square units. It says to circle the rug below that you think shows the correct way to use square units to measure its area. So, keeping in mind what we've learned so far, so here we have a rug with some tiles on top of it, right? It's beautiful, it's neat. We can clearly see the number of square units that we're working with. To the right, we have something else that has some square units on top of our beautiful rug, which is again a 2-dimensional closed figure. And it appears to be kind of a hot mess. Why? Because we have these tiles that are just kind of on top of each other. They're overlapping. It's not completely covering the rug. It's kind of a mess. This is not the correct way. Friends, that is not correct. So when we want to explain what we are doing here, the correct way is clearly this first sample up here. Why? Because the squares are fully covering the space that we want to measure. All right, so if we, for clarity, let's kind of, I guess we'll number our rugs. We have rug number 1, which is beautiful and orderly. And then we have rug number 2, and that's a hot mess. Okay, so number 1 is great. So we're going to say that number 1 is correct because the squares fully cover the space we want to measure. Number one is correct because the squares fully cover the space we want to measure. Now, big important piece here. Big important piece. So important, I'm going to be writing it in a different color so that you recognize it more. So, there is no overlapping or gaps. There is no overlapping or gaps. What do we mean by that? Take a look at sample number 2. Look at the overlapping, friends. Look at the overlapping. Look at all the gaps. Look at the gaps. When we are measuring in square units, the squares must fully cover the space that we want to measure, all right? There cannot be overlapping. There cannot be gaps. That is very, very important. All right. So when we take a look at C, it says, what is the area of the rug in square units? Let us take a look at our beautiful number 1. That's just wonderful. It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are 6 square units total. There are 6. So when we take a look at number 5, it is asking us to reflect. We do that a lot. We think about things, right? It says, explain how you use square units to find the area of a shape. So it says that you, and should you write this down? Definitely. You cover the shape with square units and count how many it takes to cover the shape completely. Without gaps or overlaps. And again, super important, without gaps or overlaps. You cover the shape with square units and count how many it takes to cover the shape completely without gaps or overlaps. I'm going to give you a moment to get all of that written down. All right, friends. I'm going to give you about 10 more seconds before I remove this from the projection. So again, we cover the shape with square units and count how many it takes to cover the shape completely without gaps or overlaps. So friends, I am going to give you an example of what we mean. So what have I done? I have had to get creative, friends, in my classroom. So here is a piece of chart paper, right? It's almost like a piece of scrap paper that I wasn't using. And you will notice that on this piece of scrap paper, chart paper, I have created a closed two-dimensional figure, right? And we need to find the area inside this closed two-dimensional figure. So what I have done to demonstrate or illustrate the concept behind this finding the area, I have taken this chart paper, and what I'm going to use is Scrabble pieces, as you can see, but I'm going to be flipping them over so there's no letters. We're going to call these tiles for now. All right, again, getting creative, using what I have in the classroom. So again, friends, when we're doing our math, when we're trying to figure things out, do we need to go out and tell moms and dads that you need to buy all of these things, you need to buy all of these tools? You absolutely do not. We just get creative, and that's exactly what I've done. I went into my trash can, I found some paper scraps, and I took my tiles out of my Scrabble game. And that is what I'm using to demonstrate this today. Okay, so we need to find the area of this. So here we go. Scrabble tiles, face down. We're going to pretend that they're exactly the size of the squares, right? They're obviously not, but this is just kind of to demonstrate what we do when we're finding area, right? So we're going to need to cover all this up. So far, I've used 5 Scrabble tiles, right? But I'm not done. So I'm just going to keep grabbing Scrabble tiles. And again, we're going to pretend that they're exactly the same size as the squares I'm covering. This is just to demonstrate the concept of what we do. Still not done. Oh my. Got one more row. Oh, perfect. Now I'm done. So now, friends, I just need to count how many Scrabble tiles, or for this demonstration, square units, I used to cover this closed two-dimensional figure. And now we just take it back to first grade math because we're simply going to count forward by 1. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Oh, look at that, 15. So this took 15, we're going to call it square units equals the area. 15 square units equals this area. If you have some type of chart paper at home, if you have a Scrabble game at home, could you use those as tiles? Sure. Why not? It works. And again, friends, we're pretending that there's no gaps here, right? This is just to show you how to cover and count. All right, we're going to come back together here.